thanks everybody. It's just lovely to see you all, and thank you for staying on camera actually for this workshop if you're able to, because it really helps Jane and me to connect with you. I shall hand over to Jane in a minute. Just a couple of words of introduction from me. As you might have heard in previous sessions, I'm a head teacher, and this is my third headship, but they've all been values-based headships. And at the same time, I'm CEO of Values-Based Education International, which is a huge honour, but enables me to be doing continuous action research and to be developing a values-based approach with my school, and then sharing the best of with everybody else. And using reflection is something I'm really passionate about because of the reasons you'll see a little later on in the workshop. But we're just thrilled that that you're a bit enticed by it too. And I'm really thrilled to be working with Jane Hawkes, who is bringing a whole new dimension to our work in schools through her own background, which she'll tell you about. So Jane, comes over to you.
Thank you, Bridget. And yes, heartfelt thanks for you two coming along to our workshop this Friday. Well, for me, it's Friday afternoon. I know for some of you, it's very different times of the day. And a little bit, I mean, my background is I've worked with Neil now for the last 12, 13 years, supporting VbE in every way that it grows and develops, and travelled with him globally. It's been a real privilege. And because of my own professional interest, I trained as a psychotherapist, so I've worked a lot with both adolescents and adults who often have had a lot of difficulties to deal with in their lives. And I became more and more fascinated in the concept of the reflective practice that was very much part of VbE, and started to develop my own personal practice, which profoundly impacted on me. And I just, Neil and I teach this, have been teaching it to children, to adults, and I think it's the greatest gift. It's another one of those things that we've all forgotten. We know how to do this, but somehow or other in the busyness of our lives, we don't pay enough attention to just stopping and pausing and connecting to that deep resource of inner wisdom and courage we have. And I am on a mission to help children connect to this as early as possible, so that when they're faced as adults, like we've been with this sort of COVID situation, they can dig deep and find their inner resources to not only support themselves, their families, but their wider communities too. So yeah, Bridget and I put together a little workshop for you all. And one of the first things we were just curious about before we even outline what we're going to do is, could you just give us a heads up if you're already practicing this yourself or using it with children? We'd just like to get an idea of where each of you might be already on this journey of reflection. So maybe just put your hand up if you're using reflection for yourself first. So if you do regularly meditate or, okay, thank you. And any of you using it with children? Thank you, Angela. Thank you. Any of you using it with children as well? Okay, thank you. So, we want this to be very co-creative. Yes, Bridget and I've got some ideas, but, please chip in with your questions, and we're going to go on our journey. So I'm going to hand back to Bridget now, who's just going to give a little outline of how we propose to run our workshop this afternoon.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks, everybody. That's been really, really helpful. Yes, quite straightforwardly, we're going to talk about what reflection is, why do it, and what the impact is, because certainly as an educator myself, I want to know if what I'm doing is going to make a difference. So we'll be sharing that with you, and then perhaps most importantly of all, how to do it, or there's a whole range of ways of doing it, but we're going to share with you some ways that we like to work with children. And so part of this is going to be experiential. And to begin with, very appropriately, Jane's going to lead us into just a short reflection for ourselves. So this is just for us. Thanks, Jane.
Okay, so let's just take a moment to pause to be. I'm going to invite you to sit as comfortably as you can, and maybe to really see yourself sitting with dignity, feeling yourself well supported by whatever you're sitting on. And if you feel comfortable, to just soften your gaze or even close your eyes. Just beginning to settle your physical body. Maybe beginning to notice your natural breath as you breathe in and as you breathe out. Maybe even taking a moment to appreciate your breath. It was the very first thing that gave you life when you were born, the fact that you could breathe. And it will be your constant companion throughout your life. It will never leave you while you're alive. So now just take a moment to be aware of any mental activity that may still be going on in your mind. Just lightly take your breath to any activity that's going on. Just letting it know you notice it. And maybe you're also now aware of any physical sensations or even emotions that might be around in your body at the moment. And just, again, see if you can take your breath lightly to let any tension, sensation, emotion know that you recognize it. And now see if you can deepen your breath. So beginning to really see if you can breathe into your abdominal area. Feeling the rise of your abdomen as you inhale and the natural fall back as you exhale. So now we're consciously both deepening and slowing our breath. And as you deepen and slow your breathing down, just see if there's any inner wisdom that your inner world would like you to pay attention to. Maybe there's some clarity as to something you need clarity on. Maybe there's a sense of why you're here with us this afternoon. Just listen deeply to whatever may or may not be there for you in this moment. And now, just allow your breath to be its natural breath again. Just to breathe as you need to breathe right now, in this moment. Send a thank you to your inner world for any gifts it may or may not have given you, but just a thank you for having let you pause just for a few minutes. Become aware again of your physical body sitting on the chair. And bring yourself back to being with us on this workshop when you're ready. Maybe move your body a little bit if that feels right. Yeah. Welcome back.
Gosh, thanks so much, Jane. I don't know about anyone else, but I could have stayed there all afternoon. Oh, amazing. Thank you. Simply, that side is inviting us to think, what is reflection? And hopefully that session that Jane shared with us has already given you a very good sense for yourself, what is reflection. It's been called, in terms of lots of things, heard it termed as a brain holiday, a space for ourselves, a chance to refuel. Interestingly, when I talked to the children and asked them this very question, lots of them said, it's a time for me. And I thought it was really interesting that they'd associated it with a purposeful moment that was, they're quite right, is just for them, and a chance to really connect deeply with their inner world and to develop their inner wisdom and connect with their own intuition, all of which are an intelligence that sometimes we forget that we own, as Jane said at the very beginning. But I found that giving children these moments of stillness and quiet, when the whole room is quiet and there's that sense of permission, is tremendously impactful. Jane, did you want to add anything to that overview?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Bridget. I guess for me, it is those specific times when we really do just stop. And there may be so much happening, and that's often the hardest time for us to stop. So there might be formal times when we do reflection, but sometimes we just pause and stop ourselves and take that moment to just reconnect to what really is important, to connect to your truth. And there are so many different forms. I think we will be coming to that as well, but they can be guided visualizations, the little pause to be, as I just offered then. But one of the key things that I think reflection is always doing is looking to bring us as much as it can into the real moment, so that whatever is happening around us, we're paying attention from a place of being really fully present and not being influenced by what we know has happened in the past. And I think that, to me, is one of the key things about why when we do this, it is so powerful. And it reminds me of that beautiful saying, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That is why we call it the present. So,
thank you, Jane. So if we move now on to why do it. Neil would call this the fourth R, along with reading, writing and arithmetic. And I think children intuitively understand how good it is for us. And that connection between the mind and the body is well known, isn't it? We know that if we are well in our minds, we can be well, feel better in our bodies. And we know that our minds are our greatest tool and sometimes an untapped source of strength for us. So on the screen there is little Maddie. This picture is a pose because I got her to do this for the camera just to show you but it's also emblematic of how children are across the whole school when we're doing the reflection. And you can see how comfortable Maddie is with being still, being quiet, and using the beautiful light of the candle for thinking time. As ever, the children express it far better than I can. And you can see these quotes here that have come from a whole range of children across a range of settings, which is quite important to say, that it's impactful for them all in perhaps slightly different ways. But this truly is something that can be done with children from all backgrounds and in schools of all sizes and contexts. And, you know, after a while of doing it, children really do report that it helps them. And I've been quite amazed actually to hear boys, girls, younger, older, talking about the effect it has on them personally. I said before about the child who said it's a time that's all for you. They recognise and connect with that deep peace that these sessions bring. I hope that you felt it just now in our reflection. It's as though we generate an outward ambience of peace that comes from our inner being. And it's almost tangible in the room when you do this with children after a while, when people are really quite intent on it. So it can also be an extraordinary act of connection. And I know that some of you are using this approach already in your school, so you'll know what I'm talking about. And if you're not, I'd love you to try it, because that sense of when the whole class or the whole school, even better, is doing it at the same time, that feeling of being alone with others is very comforting, very reassuring, and actually quite a unique sensation that is so able to draw a school together and to send the deep messages that yes, you're valued, you're loved, you're cared for, and you have a power about you as an individual that you can tap into and utilise for your own self-development and your own worth, and for the school too. Just a final short point, just to amplify that second point. This child who spoke about how angry he gets. I was quite surprised when he said that, because I'd actually forgotten how difficult this particular child used to find being with others, you know, managing the school day, let alone reflecting. And now he's in year 6. The fact that he self-identifies as somebody who's quite quick to anger, but who has now a tool that he can use to become calmer. I think that's really tremendous. And also underlined by how positive parents have been about all this. So why do reflection? One of my children said, you can imagine yourself calm, and it really works. So it's transformative. Jane, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I've also been delving into the neuroscience of all of this too. And interestingly enough, Dan Siegel, who's one of the guys I've followed, he, as Neil had said already, reflection should be the 4th R in education, because he could see that, you know, just as we teach children to clean our teeth every day, we should be taking this daily opportunity to take time to really take care of it feels like we're doing it in this brain, but this brain is connected to our whole body. And we then are connected to all the other bodies around us. So as Bridget was saying, it starts by really strengthening what's called the prefrontal cortex of the brain, this part here that lies behind our forehead. And as that gets stronger, it connects with all the earlier parts of our brain. So the limbic part of our brain, where our emotional world is often in great turmoil, and even more early than that, what we call the brainstem, which is that real fight or fright, freeze response to life. And of course, when we were many, many generations ago, our ancestors really needed to be guided by that. But now sometimes we have children coming into school that are constantly on that high alert because they don't live in safe, comfortable spaces. So as you begin to introduce this way of pausing, giving children this time to do this, you start to help them make those secure connections in their brain that then go into their whole body. So from a neuroscientific point of view, this is life-saving and starts to help children become ready for learning. I know schools where they have children who have come from very difficult family backgrounds. When they come in first thing in the morning, this is the first thing they will do, so that the children then are becoming ready for learning. How can we learn when we're living in fear? It's not possible. It helps us distance ourselves from the emotional overwhelm that sometimes we can have. Even I, practicing my meditation on a regular daily basis, can sometimes feel if something's intense, it could be something I see on the news, it could be something really personal. But that emotional overwhelm can, really start to take over. And if I just come alongside that, then I calm down and my perspective changes. It doesn't mean that what I heard, nothing's changed about that, but I'm much more ready to meet the problem rather than having that emotional overwhelm. So, yeah, some of the little reasons why, please do start doing reflection. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Just briefly jump in, so you've got 15 minutes left. Oh, half an hour, sorry. Half an hour.
4:45, yeah. So the impact, we've been talking about that all the way through. Here's another very clever pupil of mine. She describes it as like a door opening and showing you the way. And I think, that's such a profound response to this work, and so fitting, because what children consistently report, and adults too, is that it is about developing that inner calm. And as Jane's just been outlining, so necessary is that calm for us to function effectively in our everyday lives, just to function, never mind anything else. But what that beautiful bedrock of calm in our inner world then does is enables us to be alive to our own intuition and to our deeper wisdom. So the impact of a calm inner world manifests in a school in more positive behaviour, more positive relationships, a greater willingness to work and an engagement with work. Your mind isn't fuzzed up with a whole tumult of emotions. You can concentrate, can't you? I think as adults we all connect with that incredibly well. I can't think. If I'm calm, I'm able to achieve a great deal more. So it's a kind of calm that's alive, a calm that lights you up, really. And of course, when you have a school that is full of little people and big people, all feeling a degree of calm and able to operate at in their better selves, because you have an ethos and an atmosphere that is highly impactful. And what's more, just a joyous place to be. And that's what we all want, isn't it? I mean, a place where we feel great, where children can feel great, where we understand that life isn't great all the time, but this is really a tool for us to pick up and use, and we can transform our own inner world and our outer world by using it. So moving on now to how we do it, and there are lots of different ways. I'm going to hand over to Jane to share with us a few of these different ways, and then I'm going to lead us in a creative visualization, which is a technique that we've developed between us to share with you. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Bridget. And in this photo, this is a very familiar photo to me, although I wasn't actually leading the reflection. This is a group of children from West Kidlington, where Neil first started really using these techniques with his school community. And this is a reflective practice in an assembly. So classically, I mean, I know not everybody does do assemblies, but certainly as part of our UK system here, the idea of the whole school community coming together. And as you look into that picture, you can see not only are the children sitting quietly in reflection, but so are the teachers and the adults. And we talk a lot about modelling and values-based education. And at these times in particular, they're not the moments for the teachers to be doing their marking, or there is something about we're all doing this. So definitely in assemblies would be one time. And, I was just reflecting on the impact. What all of this is starting to do is helping us sometimes reflect on, why did I do that the other day? And as it builds in with a values philosophy, children begin to really connect to the meaning of the words and how they are either living their values or maybe sometimes not actually doing that. So certainly assemblies are really important times. And I don't know, Bridget, if you would like to share a little bit about how you use reflective practice in assemblies.
I'd love to. Thank you, Jane. And I think there is something about the ritual of doing it and the regularity of doing it that's really important. So in our school, as in other values-based schools that are following this way, it is a part and parcel of our practice. And I always begin in the same way, as Jane has just demonstrated earlier, with the focus on stillness and focusing on our breath and reassuring the children that we're all safe and cared for. And I tell them explicitly that these are our signals to ourselves to become really, really still, because when our minds are still and our bodies are still, then we can think more deeply. And the tempo in the room shifts palpably at that point. And then we've begun to be able to have a longer and longer session. It's not unusual for us to have 5 minutes together enjoying a creative visualization where I talk the children through, and then sometimes share their responses at the end. When we first start, or sometimes when we've got a new class into the school, the little ones are in charge of just modelling how we do it. And we don't have any policing. So Neil shared, if you were in Neil's session last, shared a picture of where assemblies are policed. We don't do that, and we don't force it. This is invitational only. And I've noticed that gradually, even children who used to skedaddle out of the room towards the door on their bottoms because they were determined to make a point and not be part of it have gradually come closer and closer and closer back in, because they feel the effects of it too. And we use it sometimes quickly, after lunch, after break time. Our little ones are used to doing it with the candle, and it's really humbling to see in their class, and it's just reception. And each class has got a slightly different way of approaching it. So right through to the year 5-6 class, the teacher there invites the children to lead a reflection for themselves, and that's really lovely to be part of too. So with all of this, it's invitational and can be spontaneous, always impactful in all sorts of small ways as well as big. And I'm convinced is the heart of our values-based practice. Thank you, Jane. Shall I go to the next slide? Yeah.
Okay, so this is a picture of secondary school students. They actually are students from Sweden, where Neil and I were working in Sweden, and we'd been invited specifically to help the teachers begin to embrace the idea of reflective practice. So these young people are year 9 students. They have never done anything like this before. And we would just call this a pausing to be. So this is the beginning of a lesson, and I was the one that led them in this sort of breath practice, as it was, a very simple, just a few minutes. But what's so fascinating is, at the end of the day, Neil and I had left the school by then, the teacher reported back to me and she said the student said to her, please can we do that breathing that we did with Jane earlier again? And it began to make me realize that young people are hungry for this. Nobody's giving them those opportunities just to pause and be, and it was lighting that fire, and that has been quite often the case. And while we're thinking about pausing to be, I don't know how easy it's going to be for you to see this, but we have a chime bar here. I'm not going to hit the chime bar because it won't sound very nice through the Zoom connection, but these are beautiful ways of training children in a classroom to pause to be. So if the teacher feels that for whatever reason there's the energy in the class isn't looking good or feeling good, they invite the students that when the chime bar is hit, everybody stops what they're doing, everybody just pauses. They take a few moments to go inside, to be quiet, to not speak to anybody. And that is held for maybe a minute or two. And then the chime bar is hit again and the students resume. So just a simple idea of a little brain break, pause to be. And, you know, I don't know about you, but sometimes I can be sitting struggling with something and it just isn't working. But maybe I'll go out for a walk or a bike ride, or I've got that time just to let my brain settle. So that's another lovely way of doing these reflections. Plus, I think, you know, Bridget was saying, you know, it isn't just once a week in assembly or maybe every time in assembly. It really is important if the whole class can have at least one time during the day when reflection happens. It may be right at the beginning of the school day. Often it's after lunch when, you know, the children perhaps have particularly, you know, had some difficult times in lunch and are still feeling a bit aggravated, to give them the space to maybe play some calming music for them as they come in, for them to sit, and for them to know when they're beginning to feel ready for their learning again. While we're just here, I've got another little thing that we show a lot. This is our pause to be bottle, really, our pause bottle. And this is just a bottle of water. And although it has got glitter in, I think you can get something that isn't plastic anymore. When I shake it up, you can see how fizzy that is. And that's often how so many people's brains are. They're just fizzing. But in that pausing to be, you can see gradually the glitter settles down again. So very simple to make, and if you put some glycerine in with them as well, I think it just helps maybe the whatever you've put in there float a bit longer. And many schools have said to me that children will come in from the playground and they will say, can I have the pause bottle? Because they know it represents how they're feeling. And it's very simple to make. I know a secondary school where all the teachers made their own too. I think they use glass jars there, which is probably even more environmentally friendly than using any plastic bottles. But just little ways to think about how to symbolize what that pausing to be does. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. I'll move to the next slide now.
And isn't this beautiful? Maybe some of you have seen or do this, but this is children in a kindergarten, and this is from Iceland. And these children had done a little bit of yoga, so there'd been that sort of movement beforehand, and then they're in a circle, all their little feet are touching. Can you see the teachers there too? They have a little soft toy on their tummy, and they're just invited to breathe deeply. So that little toy rises up as they inhale and falls down as they exhale. So just a beautiful way of not only giving the children a chance to pause, but giving the teacher a chance to, and inviting the children to really breathe deeply. I have a passion about breathing. I think it comes because I teach yoga now too, and breath work is so important in that. But I was talking to a doctor friend recently, and he said, you do realize, Jane, that as we age, our lung function changes. It gets harder and harder for us to breathe deeply. It's like your lungs harden up a bit. So I thought, oh my gosh, even more of a good reason to focus on deep breathing regularly, so you keep your lungs as healthy as you can. I don't know, Bridget, if you want to share anything about little ones and reflective practice. I mean, these children are about 3, 4, sort of nursery age.
I would just like to add, Jane, that I think the younger that we start with our children, the better it is, because there's a little bit of all of us that feels perhaps a little self-conscious when we first start to do this. But young children seem to be intrinsically attuned to this, and don't find it strange at all. Added to which, I think the younger we can teach our children to be able to be still, the quicker we enable them to discover a whole host of other skills and abilities at their fingertips. And just watching children over the years, the modelling from the adult is so important. And as Jane said earlier, it couldn't happen without that. But actually the modelling from the children to the children is all potent, all powerful. And when you're with a group of children who are quite unabashed about sharing their emotional responses to a reflection, talking about perhaps the spiritual side that they've discovered from their reflection, it's really humbling, and reminds us over and again about just how much there is to educating a child. This is about whole person educating. And when they talk about the way in which they've shared that with their families, gosh, even better still, because you know that this practice is walking right out of the school doors and the school gates and into the whole community, and that we're touching people, beyond those that we can just see. Okay, so we just move to our last slide in this series. And Jane, would you like to talk about the brain breaks?
I sort of have mentioned that with the chime bar. But the actual reflective practice this group of Year 6 children was doing, this is a Year 6 cohort of children, was very calming music was being played. Again, I taught them through a breathing practice. And then internally, they were just giving themselves the affirmation, I am calm, I am calm. Not saying it out loud, but just internally. So it's just, I guess when we start to think about how we're going to do our reflections, it brings out the creativity of youth, the adults who will be leading the children, or as Bridget said, the children who start to lead the reflections. And there are many, many resources out there, which, Bridget and I'll talk a bit about the resource we're creating too. But, that was just a very simple thing. So very calming music playing and the children just internally saying, I am calm. So, yeah, I just want to just check. I think we've talked about, and also you can do having a little quiet time with music, and maybe the children are doing some mindful coloring, just that creative, mindful artwork. I've put your creativity, the children's creativity. I do think these reflective practice times are phenomenally important for creativity. And we're going to now, I think, be led by Bridget in a guided visualization, which is often one of the most beautiful ways to do a reflection. So thank you, Bridget. Bridget, you need to unmute yourself.
There we are. Thank you. Just to pick up on Jane's point about affirmations and the positivity that we can bring through using reflection with children, been described as sending positive messages to ourselves, and the transformation in terms of self-esteem, self-worth and self-confidence that we can also bring through practice like this is something that I really wanted to share with you today. And going to lead you through one of the reflections that Jane and I have created together as a creative visualization for children. I just wanted to say that aspect of affirmatory language is something that we've deliberately built in, as you'll see, because a reflection time has the facility to do so much on so many levels, all at the same time. So now, yes, so now, before we come to our part at the end where we come back together and reflect on this session, just want to take you through something that I would use with children, have used with children, do use with children all the time, and that Jane and I are writing as a series for sharing with schools, making it freely available on the values-based website, and also thinking about putting it towards a book. So if you'd like to imagine yourself in your classroom and listening to this as a teacher with your class, being a child in your class, and it will be an experiential point, as was the time we had earlier. So generally I start with lighting a candle, or I might play some beautiful music, and I'm just going to read you the words that I would be using. So today's reflection is all about our value of joy, and welcome everybody to this value. I'm just going to invite you to think about what that means to you today, and invite you to think about a time when you've been feeling joyful and how that made you feel deep inside. Because when we talk about joy, we often think of feeling brimful with happiness and just so much that we're bouncing inside. And we might feel the value of joy for others and other people, because often joy comes with other people. And that's when we feel enjoyment. But did you know we can actively make joy for ourselves and for other people and for our world? And that is called altruism. We don't have to just wait for someone else to do it for us. So I'm going to share with you a guided visualization that you can do on your own today, or perhaps with someone else in your family. So first of all, we're going to calm our body. And just find a comfortable position. And then feel the connection of our physical body. And I'm now going to invite you to gently close your eyes or soften your gaze. And just sense yourself sitting with dignity. And today, for the value of joy, I'm going to invite you to place your hands and your palm on your knee outwards, just like I'm doing here, so that you can give and receive joy. And I will often develop a different position for our hands depending on what the value is, so that there's that physical and tangible connection. And now I'm going to invite you to just take a moment to be aware of any activity that may be going on in your mind, because our minds are so active, aren't they? But we're learning to just watch that activity that's happening here. Just observe it, because we're watching without judging ourselves. We're just noticing, and that feels good, doesn't it? Now just notice any emotions or sensations that you notice in your body. They're okay. If you need to though, just see if you can attend to them by breathing your breath to them. And you're really good at this. So just focus your attention on your breath. Just allow your body to do it naturally. Just see what you notice. Maybe it's the cooler air in your nostrils as you breathe in, and the warm air as you breathe out. Maybe you notice the rise and fall of your chest. And just see if you can gently breathe a little bit deeper now. Exhale for a little longer. Just notice how calm and peaceful you feel. That's so beautiful, everybody. As you sit feeling calm and still, I'm going to invite you to imagine in your mind's eye that you're dancing and playing in the sparkling sunshine. Just feel its warm rays touching your skin. It makes you feel tingly and light and playful. In your hands now, see a beautiful ball. This is your ball of joy. It could be any colour you want it to be. Enjoy throwing it and catching it in your hands. And as you play with it, it grows bigger and bigger. It's beautiful. And the colours sparkle in the sunlight. Just delight in it. It feels wonderful to throw it in the air and feel its smooth weight as you catch it again. Allow yourself to breathe in this wonderful sensation of utter delight. Allow it to travel right through your body. And I invite you now to say to yourself the words, I feel joy. I'm joyful and glad. And now in your mind's eye, see yourself joined by others. These people might be your friends or your family or people who could be new friends. Throw your ball of joy high for the others to catch. Enjoy their joyfulness as they share in your joyful game. The joy that comes with others, that shared joy, is even more glittery and wonderful than your own private joy. I invite you now to thank everybody for sharing the joy. And throw your ball of joy out into the world. Let it work its magic for somebody else too. And now I invite you to just become aware of your body in the room. Give your toes a little wiggle in your shoes. And wiggle your fingers. And open your eyes. As you do so, bring back that wonderful joy into this room, into right now. And give somebody a smile. Thank you, everybody. And what I then finish by saying to the children is something like, remember that this is a feeling you can create for yourselves anytime, in any place, if you want to. And the more you do it, then the more joyful you become. And people will benefit from all the joy that you radiate. And then I'd finish by thanking them as I thank you. And invite anybody to share their thoughts and feelings. So, Nigel, just for the last part of this, do we have time to just hear from anybody if they'd like to share their reflections?
Let me suggest this. We're going to need to stop now because it's 3:45, but let's finish the recording and then let's stay on afterwards. And if anybody does want to share and chat, they're very welcome to do so. So can I just thank Jane and Bridget so much for an incredibly interesting and calming and exciting session. And really just thank you so much on behalf of everyone for everything you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. And may I just say, in case people need to go, that we're making these available on the website. And we'd love to hear back from you about your experiences. We'd love to be on the journey with you. I know that there are some of you who are really keen and probably experts at this yourselves. So
Thank you very much.
thank you.